Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about the books that I read in January 2023, so doing my first reading roundup of this year. And I'm not going to lie to you, January has been a bit of a slow reading month for me. I ended up reading 5 books this month, which, is not bad at all, but is a much slower pace than I had been reading previously. And the main explanation for that, if you end up watching my January moments vlog, is that I was rehearsing and then eventually performing a show. I know I've mentioned a few times that I was in an amateur production of Evita, and that show actually happened between the 23rd and the 28th of January, and it went very, very well. Of the 3 shows that I've done so far in Oxford, that being My Fair Lady, Calendar Girls, and now Evita, I do think that this one went the best of all 3 shows. And it was the first show that I've done with them so far that hasn't been completely sabotaged by COVID. So that was a lovely, delightful treat. But because we were doing more intense rehearsals and then eventually was doing show week, I feel like my brain just was not on reading. So I feel like it was a win for me that I was able to read anything at all in January. But what I did read, I did actually really quite enjoy. So let's just get into these books. As I say, I read 5 books in January, those books being A Terrible Kindness by Jo Browning-Wroe, After I Do and Forever Interrupted by Jenkins Reid, You, A History, From the Alarm Clock to the Toilet, The Amazing History of the Things You Use Every Day by Greg Jenner, and then finally Wearing My Mother's Heart by Sophia Thakur. This month I didn't end up getting any rereads in, but I did get a DNF in, and that for me was A Net for Small Fishes by Lucy Jago. This is historical fiction. It's set in James I's court and tells the real life story of a murder that occurred in the court. I read about 120 pages or so of this, and there were aspects of this that I was really quite liking. It was just putting me in a bit of a slump. I wasn't really very engaged with it. I wasn't really finding myself very compelled by any of these characters. The only thing that was drawing me through was that I knew some of the history that was being portrayed and I wanted to know how it was going to be portrayed. But when you're a quarter of the way through and you're just kind of like, just kind of dragging yourself through a book, I think that's the point at which you have to be like, okay, let's put this down now. You don't need to continue with this. I think maybe if you enjoyed something like Rizzio by Denise, Mina, you might enjoy this, but I just couldn't get myself to engage with this one, unfortunately. There were some gorgeous descriptions, particularly of clothing in here. Very detailed, intricate descriptions of clothing, which makes sense because this main character, our narrator, is very much into her fashion, so it doesn't feel like superfluous detail. Another thing that I quite enjoyed about this was that the main character does completely buy into a lot of superstitions of the time and will be recommending these treatments, these remedies for medical ailments that are just absolutely horrible. And it made me think about all of the times where I am reading historical fiction and the main character, our narrator, is usually ahead of their time in many different ways, but especially when it comes to superstitions, and they will somehow seem to know that they shouldn't be doing the things that everybody else in their society is doing. Just I don't know, I just had an innate knowledge of germ theory, even though it's the 17th century. And I just quite appreciated that the author was like, no, I'm going to make my main character completely buy into all of this. They are seen as the expert here, and this is what they recommend because this is what people were recommending. So things that I appreciated, but ultimately I just didn't want to continue with this one. In terms of my star rating breakdown, we had one book that got 3 stars, that was Forever Interrupted. After I Do got a 3.5, and then all 3 of the other books that I read ended up getting 4.5 stars from me. Like I say, it was a pretty good reading month, and I can definitely already see some of these books making it onto my best books of the year list. Unless, of course, what I'm hoping happens is that something absolutely spectacular comes along. In terms of my genre breakdown, I read 1 book which was historical fiction, 2 books that would fit into the romance contemporary category, 1 poetry collection, and then 1 children's non-fiction. Now, the main reason that I am now doing roundups instead of wrap-up videos is because I did want to dedicate more time to doing individual book reviews. So for A Terrible Kindness, currently I am planning doing a review video of that. It's just taking me a while. I don't know why. I'm kind of hyping up in my head writing the script for this because I want to do this book justice, and I just feel like I don't have the words, but I am planning it. It is coming. For After I Do and Forever Interrupted by Jenkins Reid, I have a different plan for these 2 books. These are both Jenkins Reid backlist books, and I realise that I literally just have 1 full-length novel to read left from Jenkins Reid before I've read all of her books. So I just need to read Carrie Soto's back, and then I've done all 8, I think it is, of her books. And what I would quite like to do is do a Jenkins Reid spotlight video just talking about my personal opinions on her books. I know that's something that a lot of people have done, but I just want to throw my opinion into the mix. For You Are History, I want to do a very similar thing. I have now read all of Greg Jenner's books. So You Are History, Ask a Historian, Dead Famous, and 1,000 Years in a Day. And something that I have been kind of thinking about doing for a while is doing another history series. Who knows if it's going to be another history series that I start and then don't keep on doing, even though I do have full plans of continuing all of the ones that I've started. But one that is basically about kind of like beginner history books, recommendations of good places to start, and focusing on like particular book series that would be good. So things like Horrible Histories, things like Ruth Goodman's How to Be a insert time period person here, How to Be a Tudor, How to Be a Victorian. And I also feel like Greg Jenner's books really fit into that category of like popular history that is really, really good if you want an introduction to history. And I quite like to do like a spotlight on his books. And then in terms of the individual book review for Wearing My Mother's Heart, I've actually already filmed and uploaded that review video, so I will link that down below. When I do get around to filming and uploading each of these review videos, I will pop them down below for you. The final question is, where is my TBR at? Because when I was back home at Christmas, I was able to collate all of my TBR together and actually have a number of unread books. And as you will have seen from my TBR video, you'll have seen that I started January the 1st with 65 books on my TBR. And actually, when it came around to watching that video once I uploaded it, I realised that one of the books that was on that video, which was The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde, I had already read. I'd filmed the video just after Christmas, and it was between Christmas and New Year that I read The Canterville Ghost. So actually, I started January the 1st with 64 books, not 65. Since January the 1st, I have bought 8 books, so that took the TBR up to 72 books. However, one of those was a book that I had already read, taking the TBR down to 71. I read 2 of those hold books, taking it down to 69, and then read 3 books from my existing TBR, taking it to 66. I then DNF'd 1 book, as you will have seen, and then I also unhauled a book. One of the books that was on my TBR, I just decided I'm probably not going to read, and so I did unhaul it. So that leaves me with a TBR of 64. So I am no better and no worse than I started. Which, you know, not too bad, could be worse. But you know, one of my little projects, one of my little goals is to get my TBR down this year. I know that's my goal for every year, but I really do want to keep track of it. So hopefully I can whittle that number down. And there we go, that is my little roundup of all of the books that have come in and out of my life in the month of January 2023. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today. Alternatively, let me know about anything that you enjoyed in January. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.